guys have seen me do a lot to this car, but you haven't seen me do anything related to the transmission. Today that's going to change as we install a short shifter. I hopped on Eurotuning and ordered myself a CTS Turbo short shifter. The specific shifter is designed to reduce the front-to-back movement of the transmission so that we can shift faster. They make another piece to reduce the side-to-side movement of the transmission, but this is immediately the more important part. Unlike the OEM piece, this piece is adjustable and has two spots where you can connect to the transmission cable. This allows for either 20 or 30% in throw reduction. To start this comparison off, I decided to measure the stock throw of the vehicle, which ended up being around 4 inches. This is honestly pretty long for a stock car. The first thing I decided to remove was the intake. For me, I have an aftermarket intake, so removing it is pretty quick, but for you it might take a little bit longer. Either way though, removing the intake's not really a difficult job. This is one of my favorite mechanical shots I got. The piece we're replacing is the one rotating horizontally as opposed to moving vertically. The clips that hold this on are really easy to remove once you know what to do. Simply lift the lip with the hole in it up and slide it off. The 3 of these you're going to need to remove to do this job are located here, here, and here. Once these are off, you can move the shifter cables aside. The next thing you're going to want to do is remove the bolt holding the piece onto the car. It's important to take note of the orientation of the OEM part. One tooth is missing and you're going to need to make sure that the new part is orientated the exact same way on the gear as the old part. Another tip I found helpful was to use a socket extender and a hammer to gently loosen the part from the transmission. You can also remove the gear selector to get you a little bit more room. My hands didn't exactly fit underneath this piece, so I used a crowbar to help me get this piece off. But it should slide off with a little bit of wiggle room. So here's where it gets interesting. How does this piece work? Here are the two side by side so you can see the difference. In order to select a gear, we rotate this piece using a shifter cable around a fulcrum marked in red. The distance from the fulcrum to the part where we're pulling with the shifter cable will be marked in blue for each of the pieces. Pretty easy to see the difference between these two parts. The aftermarket part reduces this distance by quite a bit. In order to properly select a gear, we need to rotate this piece around the fulcrum the same amount for both pieces, no matter the distance to the shifter cable. If we draw another line to show where these pieces will be and what they'll look like after we've rotated it the right amount to get into gear, you can see the dramatic change in height. You can treat the green line I'm adding as the distance you're going to need to shift the transmission. Another thing to note is, since this distance is shorter, you're going to need to push harder on the gear lever in order to provide the right amount of torque to rotate the transmission the same amount. Keeping in mind the original orientation, I put the new part in where the old part went. After that, it's as simple as redoing the steps that you did to get it off in the opposite order. Once the bolt is loosely on, you can take the gear selector and begin reassembling that. Then you can install the transmission cables and reattach all the clips. Before you tighten this piece down, make sure you line it up correctly. Otherwise, you're going to significantly damage your transmission and you could lose several gears in the process. Here's another mechanically satisfying shot of the transmission shifting, this time with the short shifter. I'm going to show a before and after shifting of 1 through 6 so you can see the difference. This piece reduced about 1.5 inches per shift. Honestly, this is incredible for a $100 upgrade when you consider how often you shift while driving the car and how much time that actually saves. One thing I'll note, after you replace your short shifter, what you're going to want to do is replace all of the bushings in the gear lever. These bushings wear out over time, and this is a 20-year-old car, so naturally I think they're pretty much gone. You're going to notice them more after you put in a crisp short shifter just because you have one really hard and new part and a bunch of 20-year-old parts which fit poorly. So that's exactly what I'll be doing next week. I'm going to be using a Diesel Geek kit to replace all of the bushings in the transmission and hopefully fix those crisp shifts and make them that much better. If you'd like to check that out, or see other content like this or other build videos, please like and subscribe. Either way, I hope you have a fantastic day. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you learned something.